Alright guys, so today we're going to be talking about weld through primer. I don't know if you guys know this, but I really hate this stuff, and you probably remember this is funny because I've used the crap out of these little panels here in the past. Now I did these multiple years ago. This was the SPI epoxy torture test. I actually used it also for one of my butt welding MIG videos, which has got over 100,000 views, which blows my mind since I made it for Matt at King's Disaster Garage. Well, obviously it was a pretty popular video. So, but anyway, I'm still using these pieces, which is pretty funny, really. I've got a lot of use out of these little pieces of metal here for sure. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to test this weld through primer. And so get this all dried off, and I'm going to cut me a little slit, much like I did this one here, and spray weld through primer on the front and the back. And what I'm trying to do is basically imitate what the inside of my rocker panels would do if I was to just patch the rocker panels versus replacing the whole rocker panel, because I'm going to have to replace the rocker panels. Either that or I'm going to have to basically patch the whole front side. But what I get at, and you guys know that I'm it's a big deal for me on this, is the back sides of the welds. So because you can paint, coat, seal, whatever you want to do the front of this, but the back side, it is what it is whatever's there. So say you have epoxy on the back side of your weld, it's just going to burn off, and then it's going to leave exposed metal. So how do you protect that? Well, you either take that coating that you go up inside the rails with and hope that you get it, take your camera and try to inspect it and the whole deal. You either go through all that, or you just trust that you hopefully got it, or you just leave it bare and let it rust. So I'm not about that, because obviously we're trying to make these repairs last a long time, as long as possible. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some weld through primer, and I'm going to spray both sides of this, and probably go ahead and cut me a slit in that so I can weld it. And let's see. I was going to tell you also, had a guy ask me about what I'm using here on to grind down the welds. This is basically a roll lock disc, but it's made by Merit. It's called Merit Power Lock. And I ended up finding these on Craigslist or something, and I had to buy a special little deal for these. But these are all 80 grit, and man, they work fantastic. I'll have these I've got 3 boxes of these, and I paid, oh man, like 10 bucks maybe for all 3 boxes, or maybe 10 bucks a box, I don't remember. But anyway, they come off the same as, and this one's about due to be changed, so I'll go ahead and pull it off. But they just kind of pop on there. You can see there, it's got that little guy there. Basically the same as a roll lock disc for the most part. Kind of pops in, and then it twists a little bit, and then you got you. And that's 80 grit, so it's not like like this stuff here is 50 grit, and I've obviously used it up quite a bit. I welded a pipe for a buddy of mine yesterday, a flange for his header, and ended up catching some rough spots on that. Here I've got another test here, other panel. I brushed the weld through here, and then this is just bare epoxy. That's just a regular epoxy, and I'm going to weld these 2 areas and see what the weld through does versus just the epoxy and how far back it burns away. So I'll bring you back when I get this set up. Alright, here we go again. Just weld through here a little bit, see how this turns out. And see, I got weld through primer on one side and just regular epoxy primer on the other. Yum, that's good stuff. Good for you too. Take your wire. The last video I did like this, I got quite a bit of criticism on my, not quite a bit, I say that, I got some criticism on my MIG welding, but I could never get anybody to make a video. I'd say, hey, if you're so good at this, you freaking make a video and show me how it's done. And nobody wanted to step up, so. And if I cared, I could come back here and fill that in, which I'll go ahead and try. At this point, this is just a little test panel. I'm not worried about filling it in perfect, but you want that to be cooled down pretty decent. Kind of zap it in there a little bit. Like that. Alright, so let's see what we got on the back side of this. See how she turned out. I'm not going to grind all that down because it's not necessary for what I'm doing here. Just more grinding and more work. Just trying to see what we get from the back side. Alright, so make sure the camera's showing that. Here's what you got. There's the weld through on the right and regular epoxy on the left. Let me go ahead and run some wire over that, kind of clean it up a little bit, see what we end up with. Like I said, I'm just lightly doing this to just get some of that off there. And obviously that discolored the epoxy a little bit there. I could probably spray something on that and clean it up, but you can see the epoxy. Alright, what are we looking at here? You can see the epoxy burn away just a little bit. It still stayed, you know, flaked up some. My guess is all that area there is going to rust. Same with this here. I would think that these beads would rust. But we're going to throw this panel outside and the elements, and we'll see what happens. So you have to stay tuned for what happens. And I'm going to go ahead and seal up. I'll probably go ahead and seal up this side, and that way no water's leaking down in here to get to the back sides of those welds. And I'll just spray a little Krylon or something on the back side of that to protect it. But yeah, we'll see what happens there. So there you go. There's a couple of little comparisons. There's another comparison of the weld through. And clearly the epoxy is not made for this. The weld through is supposed to be. But for me, I want to see if I left that inside that rocker panel like that, because water gets in those rocker panels when you're washing the car, anytime you're doing anything, it rains, whatever, and it's going to run down those welds and go out the little holes that have been made in the bottoms of the rockers. And that's how it's supposed to work. Well, obviously the epoxy would protect it, but will the weld through? So if I was to actually split that panel and put weld through on each side of the panel, just on the edges up to a ½ inch, and then welded my seams, that's what I've got. Is that going to be enough to protect it? I'm going to say no, but we'll see. I'll leave it out there for a little while, and if it starts rusting quick, I'll bring it back in. If it takes a couple weeks or whatever, or it never rusts, we'll find out. So, thanks for watching, guys. See ya. All right, guys. I put a little bit of self-etching primer over these welds, and this stuff, is as good as anything else I've used. Walmart Rust-Oleum. Putting a little bit of Rust-Oleum on the outside of this. Now I'm leaving this just like it was for our test purposes. This would be the outside of the car, and it would be painted, and then that would be inside your rocker panels, basically, if you just left the weld. So we'll see how it works out. Couple coats of this on there. Oh, that worked out good. That ought to be enough to do what we need to do. So, let me show you what I'm talking about on the car real quick. So the other day, I was looking at this panel here, and my rocker panel is crushed in, and it's actually been re-welded right through here. So I'm going to have to replace this rocker panel. So I can either replace the whole thing, cut it at the pinch welds underneath both sides. That way it keeps me completely clean on the inside here, and whatever coating's in there will be, stay what it is, which there may not be a coating in there. I don't know this old car. Once I cut it out, I'll find out, and I will coat it, because if I cut it, I planned on cutting it. I'm going to take these rockers off, and I'll probably end up running the rocker all the way across here. I may cut it up front, and so I don't have to get into all of that and pull all that apart, and then basically do pinch weld to pinch weld. So the only thing I'll have to do is just say, for shits and giggles up there, I'll have to cut it right through here, and I'll have to have a weld, seaming that in. Well, that's what I'm doing this test for, is to see if I was to coat weld through primer on the inside of that, say for whatever reason I couldn't get that wand up in there to coat that good or whatever. I wanted to see if that weld through would hold up. Alright guys, I figured I better do one of these two. I'd do a plug weld setup, pinch weld, whatever you want to call it. So we're going to do this just to find out all of it. You don't have one of these? Get one. They're nice. So what we're going to do is we're going to basically make a pinch weld. Okay, so I'll plug weld these together. Once I get the weld through primer, I'm going to make both surfaces inside here with the weld through primer. We'll go ahead and tape off the rest of this. It's not going to have weld through on it. Those mating surfaces will. Like I said on the last video, this stuff sucks, so I'm pretty much having to kind of brush it. Make sure I get all the surfaces good. Let that dry. And then we'll plug weld those together. Once it's plug welded together, I'll do the same thing I did on the other panels, and I'll put the self-etching primer over the whole outside, and I'll paint the whole thing white. We'll let that set up, and I'll put it outside where it's supposed to rain tomorrow probably, most of the day. We'll let it get rained on, and when I come back I'll cut this into 3 pieces, and then we'll just take it, try to rip it apart basically, and pull it open to see if it's started trying to rust around those areas. Again, I may get some copper and try this with copper as well. And I might try to buy some of that cavity wax stuff. I think it's called rust something or another, but anyway, some kind of cavity wax that'll seep down into, say we got these sandwiched together like that, it'll seep down into those crevices. And you'll be able to get your pinch welds hopefully surrounded, so when the water actually flows down into your rockers, it'll run out the holes and not seep down into these and start trying to contaminate your welds. So I'm gonna let that set up for a few more minutes and cure out, and I'll bring you guys back when I start to plug welding that. Alright guys, I got this up, I made it up. Didn't do a very good job cutting that, whatever, so. My opinion, this is only my opinion, take it for what it's worth. You're going to ask 50 people, I'll give you 50 different answers. Both these surfaces are made, on the insides are weld through primer. Well, I know it's called weld through primer, but I don't weld through it. It'll start popping, spattering, just getting stupid. So what I do is I take something like this, a little screwdriver or whatever you want to use, and cut this down to the bare metal. Now you've got weld through all around this area still on the outside. And if you think about it, I'll try to think about everything common sense wise as much as possible. When this starts rusting, if it does start rusting, you weld this up here in the center, it's not going to start rusting there. The water's going to get down in these crevices. It's going to start trying to penetrate from the outside. So it's not rusting in the middle. It's going to start trying to rust from the outside of the weld toward the inside. It doesn't start here in the middle. This is just how my mind works. The moisture has to come in from here or in the center part here and flow down into it. Well, if you've got all this corrosion protection around here, it's never going to get to that, in my opinion. Like I said, just my opinion, we'll see how this works. But if you try to weld through that stuff, good luck. You talk about suck. It sucks real bad, and it does it, and it spatters, and your welds end up turning up like crap. Who knows if they're very strong because did it penetrate good and the whole thing. So, like I said, that's just my 2 cents on it. And even scraping that off, it's still probably going to pop and spatter just a little bit because I didn't get obviously all of it off. So, let's do this. Do a couple plug welds here. Wires clipped. Probably need a ground. If you guys have ever tried to weld without a ground, I'll just tell you it does not work at all. See if I can ground this my clamps there, see if that works. You see it has still popped and spattered and the whole thing, but it wasn't too bad. So now I can take and grind these down or whatever, coat that, which I'm not going to grind all that down, I'm just going to go ahead and coat it. We're going to go ahead and put some of the etching primer on the outside of this and paint it white just like I did the other thing. And we'll see how that works out. I'll probably go ahead and grind some of this weld through primer off here so that my edge primer will stick, because this stuff, nothing will stick to it. It just sucks, it really does. And you can ask just about anybody on that one. So I'll go ahead and grind some of this off. Alright, I'm going to get all of it. Alright, so let's see what we've got. This is the back side. You can start to see some of the penetration coming through. And we'll see how good that penetrated when I go to ripping these apart. Might could have had a little bit more heat on it. I probably could have turned the welder up just a little bit more. And we'll see. I'm going to go ahead and grind this stuff out of here. Or brush it, maybe be able to brush it out of there. Like I said, that stuff I'm not going to stick to it. No, that ain't going to work. I'm going to have to get a wire wheel in there and clean that out. Coat that, because that would have been coated with some kind of epoxy or heat coating or something. Alright guys, sorry my battery died on that and I didn't even know it, so there's no telling how much of that. I saved you guys a lot of me blabbing probably by having that thing go bad like that. Anyway, there's my plug welds. That would be your wheel well or your whatever it is that you're working on. If this was your wheel well, like I was saying, you would seam seal that there. Let that dry for a second, flip it over. I'm gonna go ahead and coat it with this white. And we'll let that sit up overnight, throw it outside tomorrow, and see if we can get some water to penetrate into it. And let it sit for a couple weeks or whatever, and then we'll come back and I'll cut on each side of those welds, and then we'll try to rip that apart. I'll take something and just try to sit and shear that apart and see if we find any rust in the insides of those where that was mated together. I'll bring you back. Alright guys, there's our pieces. You can see there. See the welds. So that's all we got. So let me know what you guys think. See ya.